Have you ever truly stopped to consider what happens to your soul at the exact moment you draw your final breath? Not as a poetic metaphor, not as a comforting symbol, but as a real and irreversible event. Death, the moment humanity fears yet rarely dares to contemplate, is not a sudden blackout into nothingness. According to revelations attributed to Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, death is a doorway, one that opens into a sacred journey the soul must walk during the 40 days after leaving this world. Padre Pio did not speak of these things as theories. His life unfolded at the intersection of heaven and earth. Souls from purgatory appeared to him, begging for prayers and masses. He knew their spiritual condition, sensed their suffering, and understood how long their purification would last. For this reason, when he spoke of the soul after death, his words carried an unsettling authority. He taught that the soul does not drift aimlessly, nor fall into sleep, but enters immediately into motion, guided by divine order, where mercy and justice move together in perfect balance. At the instant the body exhales its last breath, something profoundly sacred begins. The soul awakens with total clarity. There is no confusion, no weakness, no distraction. Consciousness becomes sharper than it ever was in life. The soul realizes it is alive yet no longer bound to the flesh. It sees its own body lying still, the vessel it inhabited for years, and understands with a sudden shock that a threshold has been crossed, never to be reversed. Many mystics describe this moment as a startling awakening. The soul experiences both a strange freedom and a piercing nostalgia. It can see its loved ones, hear their cries, perceive the prayers spoken in the room. It longs to comfort them, to explain that it still lives, but soon discovers it can no longer communicate in a material way. This realization carries a deep interior ache, yet the soul is not abandoned. A radiant presence draws near, familiar, gentle, unmistakable. It is the guardian angel, the silent companion assigned by God from the beginning of life. Now revealed in full clarity, the angel does not frighten the soul. Instead, it brings peace. It is like recognizing a friend who was always there, even when unnoticed. The angel consoles the soul, explains what is happening, and prepares it for the path ahead. Padre Pio urged devotion to the guardian angel precisely because he knew how decisive this moment would be. As the soul adjusts to its new state, an interior illumination begins. This is not yet the formal judgment, but it is a powerful awakening of conscience. Moments from life rise up not as vague memories, but as living realities. Acts of love shine with unexpected beauty. Words spoken carelessly reveal their wounds. Nothing is hidden. There are no excuses, no self-deception. The soul sees itself as it truly is. For some souls, this illumination brings a deep attraction toward a distant light, filled with peace and promise. For others, it awakens an inner heaviness, a shadow of unresolved sin or attachment. Yet even now, mercy remains close. Padre Pio emphasized something essential here. The prayers of the living have extraordinary power in these first moments after death. A rosary prayed beside the body, a mass offered for the departed, even a simple cry of, "Lord, have mercy," becomes a real light the soul can perceive. These prayers are not symbolic. They are living forces that strengthen, guide, and console the soul as it awakens into eternity. Padre Pio once described seeing small flames of light, each one a prayer offered on earth, reaching souls in purification. But alongside light, darkness also appears. As the soul awakens, it faces a spiritual confrontation. The forces of evil, which tempted and deceived during life, now attempt to claim what they believe belongs to them. Saints describe this as a terrifying struggle. The demons accuse, magnify sins, whisper despair, insisting that mercy has run out. Yet the soul is not defenseless. The guardian angel stands firm, a shield of divine authority. Every prayer prayed in life, every sincere confession, every act of charity becomes a weapon against the accuser. Especially powerful is devotion to the Virgin Mary. Tradition teaches that Mary herself comes to the aid of her children at the hour of death, driving away the enemy with maternal authority. Padre Pio taught that before the soul faces final judgment, God grants a last, piercing understanding. The soul is allowed to see sin for what it truly is, but also to see the infinite love of Christ, who died to redeem it. This revelation is not meant to crush the soul, but to awaken repentance. If the soul responds with humility, no power of hell can prevent God's mercy from embracing it. Thus ends the first stage of the soul's journey. Having awakened from the body, comforted by its angel, strengthened by the prayers of the living, and tested in its first spiritual battle, the soul now stands on the threshold of deeper truth. The 40 days have begun, not measured by earthly clocks, but unfolding as a sacred passage, drawing the soul step by step toward its eternal destiny. As the soul moves beyond that first awakening, guided steadily by its guardian angel, a deeper phase of the journey unfolds. This is no longer the shock of separation, but the slow, solemn realization that life on earth is now complete. The noise of the world fades. The ambitions, fears, and urgencies that once consumed the heart lose their grip. What remains is truth, undiluted, undeniable, and luminous. In this stage, the soul begins to understand time differently. There is no clock, no sunrise or sunset, yet there is progression. Each moment carries meaning. Each step draws the soul closer to the reality it was created for. The angel leads gently, never forcing, never rushing. The soul is now capable of perceiving realities that were invisible during earthly life. The weight of intentions, the ripple of actions, the unseen consequences of love and neglect. The soul is shown how every choice echoed beyond the moment it was made. A small act of kindness, once forgotten, now appears as a beam of light that reached other hearts. A word spoken in anger reveals wounds that lasted years. The soul does not experience this revelation with resentment or denial. There is no place left for pride. Instead, there is a sober clarity, a deep interior assent to the truth. Yes, the soul seems to say, this is who I was. During this passage, the soul becomes acutely aware of God's patience throughout its life. It sees how grace intervened repeatedly, sometimes gently, sometimes urgently. Missed opportunities are not revealed to accuse, but to teach. The soul understands how often God knocked quietly, how many times he waited, how tirelessly he offered mercy. This realization brings both gratitude and sorrow, but it is a sorrow cleansed of despair. It is also in this stage that the soul perceives the invisible support it received while on earth. Prayers, once offered by others perhaps unnoticed at the time, now shine with unexpected power. A grandmother's whispered prayer, a stranger's intercession, a mass offered years ago, all appear woven into the fabric of the soul's story. Nothing was wasted, nothing was forgotten. Yet this growing clarity also intensifies the soul's longing. Now that the soul tastes truth without distortion, it begins to hunger for God with a force unknown in earthly life. This desire is not emotional, it is existential. The soul understands with absolute certainty that only God can fulfill it. Every created good, every earthly joy now appears small compared to what lies ahead. At the same time, the soul becomes painfully aware of any remaining impurity within itself. Not necessarily grave sin, but attachments, habits, self-centered loves that once seemed harmless. In the light of divine holiness, these imperfections feel heavy, almost unbearable. The soul does not rebel against this realization. On the contrary, it begins to desire purification. It wants to be clean. It wants to love God without obstacle. Here the angel plays a crucial role, not as a judge, but as a guide. The angel helps the soul understand that purification is not rejection, but preparation. What awaits is not punishment, but healing. The soul begins to grasp that entering the presence of infinite holiness requires total transparency, total surrender. In this phase, many souls are permitted a mysterious closeness to the earthly world, not to wander aimlessly, but to learn. The soul may be allowed to perceive moments connected to its funeral, its burial, or the prayers offered on its behalf. It sees who truly prayed, who loved sincerely, who merely passed through. This knowledge is not bitter, it is humbling. The soul also begins to detach fully from earthly identity. Titles, roles, achievements, none of these accompany it. What remains is the truth of love, given and received. The soul understands now why Scripture says that the world passes away. What once felt permanent now appears fleeting. What once felt insignificant now appears eternal. As this detachment deepens, the soul's trust must also deepen. God begins to withdraw sensible consolation. The sweetness felt earlier fades. The angel remains, but speaks less. The soul is invited into a purer faith, one no longer supported by feeling or vision. This is a delicate moment. The soul must consent to continue forward without reassurance. This interior silence is not abandonment. It is refinement. Just as gold is purified by fire, the soul is purified by trust. In this stillness, the soul learns to love God, not for comfort, but for who He is. Every trace of spiritual self-interest is gently stripped away. If the soul tries to cling to consolation, it feels pain. If it surrenders, it finds peace beneath the pain. This paradox marks the transition toward deeper purification. The soul no longer asks, "How long will this last?" It asks only, "How can I love more perfectly?" Throughout this phase, the prayers of the living continue to matter profoundly. Each Mass offered, each sacrifice made in love, reaches the soul like a cool stream. The soul recognizes these gifts instantly. Gratitude flows naturally. And though the soul cannot yet repay this love, it begins to intercede silently for those still on earth. The awareness of communion grows stronger. The soul realizes it is not isolated, not forgotten, not alone. It belongs to a vast family that stretches across heaven, earth, and purification. This knowledge strengthens endurance. The soul understands that this journey, though painful, is purposeful. By the end of this stage, the soul is no longer attached to the world it left behind. It has accepted truth, embraced humility, and surrendered control. The longing for God now outweighs every other desire. The soul stands ready for the next passage, one that will demand even greater trust, but will also draw it closer than ever before to the embrace it was created for. As the soul advances further along this sacred path, the longing for God intensifies into something almost unbearable. What once felt like desire now becomes necessity. The soul understands, with a certainty beyond emotion, that it was created for union with God and that nothing short of Him can satisfy its deepest hunger. This awareness brings both light and pain. Light, because the soul now knows where it belongs. Pain, because it cannot yet enter fully into that presence. In this stage, purification becomes more pronounced. The soul begins to experience what the saints described as the purifying fire, not a fire of destruction, but of truth and love. This fire does not burn from the outside, it burns from within. It touches every remaining attachment, every trace of self-love, every affection that is not perfectly ordered toward God. The soul feels exposed, not in shame, but in honesty. There is nowhere left to hide, and the soul no longer wishes to hide. The greatest suffering now is not fear or punishment, but delay. The soul knows God is near. It senses His holiness, His beauty, His infinite goodness, and yet it cannot fully possess Him. This distance, however small, causes a pain deeper than any earthly suffering. The saints taught that this longing surpasses all physical torment because it is the ache of love itself. The soul loves God with a purity it never knew in life, and that very love becomes its purification. Still, this suffering is not hopeless. Unlike despair, it is filled with certainty. The soul knows it is saved. It knows the fire will end. It knows every moment draws it closer to the embrace it desires. This assurance transforms suffering into willing surrender. The soul no longer resists purification. It cooperates with it. It consents to be healed completely. At this point, the soul often becomes more aware of other souls undergoing the same purification. There is a mysterious communion among them. Though each soul's purification is deeply personal, there is a shared longing, a shared direction. They are united by the same desire, the same hope. They do not envy one another. They encourage one another in silence, bound together by love for God. It is also here that the soul begins to intercede more intensely for those still living. Freed from distraction and self-interest, its prayer becomes pure. Though it cannot merit for itself, God allows its prayer to rise as a fragrant offering. Many saints believe that the prayers of purified souls carry great weight because they are united to suffering offered in love. The soul remembers its loved ones on earth and entrusts them to God with tenderness. Meanwhile, the connection between heaven and earth becomes more active. Every mass offered, every indulgence gained, every sacrifice made in charity sends real relief. The soul experiences these gifts not as abstract favors, but as tangible refreshment. The fire does not vanish instantly, but it softens. The longing remains, but it is sweetened. Gratitude flows constantly toward God and toward those who remember the soul in prayer. According to spiritual tradition, this is where the meaning of the 40 days becomes clearer. These days are not a fixed measure of time, but a divine rhythm. They represent completion, preparation, and transformation. Just as Christ fasted 40 days before his public mission and appeared 40 days after his resurrection to prepare his disciples, the soul now completes its preparation for eternal communion. As purification progresses, God gradually withdraws even spiritual comforts. Visions fade, consolations cease. The soul enters a deeper silence, a final purification of faith. This stage resembles what many saints experienced in life as the dark night. The soul no longer feels God's nearness, yet it believes more firmly than ever. Love becomes completely selfless. The soul loves God not because it senses him, but because he is God. This silence can feel overwhelming. The soul may wonder, without fear but with humility, if it has been forgotten. Yet beneath this silence is a profound peace. The soul has learned trust. It has surrendered all claims, all expectations. It rests entirely in God's will. This abandonment is the final key that unlocks the gate to perfect union. In this phase, the presence of Mary becomes especially luminous. Tradition holds that the Mother of God draws near to souls who loved her in life, not always with words or visions, but with maternal assurance. Her presence steadies the soul, strengthens trust, and prepares it for the final passage. Many saints taught that Mary accompanies souls at the threshold of heaven, as a mother presenting her child. The guardian angel, too, remains faithful. Its mission nears completion. With reverence and joy, it prepares to deliver the soul into God's presence. The angel no longer instructs, it simply accompanies. The journey is almost complete. As the symbolic 40th day approaches, the soul senses a change. The fire diminishes. The longing reaches its peak. The silence deepens, but it is no longer heavy. It becomes expectant. The soul stands at the edge of fulfillment, stripped of all that is not love. At last, the final barrier dissolves. There is no dramatic announcement, no external signal. The soul simply finds itself drawn irresistibly forward. What had been darkness becomes light. What had been distance becomes intimacy. The presence of God, once sensed from afar, now floods the soul entirely. The encounter is beyond description. Every desire is satisfied in an instant, yet the joy continues to expand. The soul does not lose itself. It finds itself fully for the first time. It sees God face to face, not as a judge, but as infinite love. The wounds of Christ shine not as reminders of pain, but as signs of victory. The soul understands everything it could not understand before. Every suffering, every delay, every purification now reveals its purpose. Nothing was wasted, nothing was cruel, all was love. Gratitude overwhelms the soul, but even gratitude gives way to pure adoration. Here, time no longer exists. The 40 days dissolve into eternity. The soul enters communion with the saints, the angels, and all who have gone before, marked by grace. Love flows endlessly, without exhaustion or end. And yet, even in this glory, the soul does not forget those still on earth. It intercedes with joy. It becomes a light for others. The journey that began with death now becomes a mission of love within eternity. This is the destiny for which every soul was created. And this is why, as Padre Pio of Pietrelcina often warned, life must be lived with eternity in mind. Because death is not the end, it is the beginning of truth, purification, and, for those who trust in mercy, everlasting joy. As the soul crosses fully into the light of God, what once felt like a journey now reveals itself as a homecoming. Nothing is rushed, nothing is violent. The soul is not overwhelmed or erased. Instead, it is fulfilled. Every longing that burned within it is now answered, not in fragments but in fullness. The love it sought its entire existence now surrounds it completely, without distance, without fear, without end. This is not an emotion that fades. It is a state of being. The soul does not merely feel joy, it becomes joy. It does not merely see truth, it lives within truth. The presence of God is not something external to be observed, but a living communion that penetrates the soul entirely while preserving its unique identity. The soul remains itself, yet is more itself than it ever was on earth. In this eternal encounter, the soul understands what words could never explain. It sees how every event of its life, both joyful and painful, was permitted or guided toward this moment. Sufferings that once seemed meaningless now shine with purpose. Delays that felt cruel now reveal themselves as mercy. Even failures, when surrendered to grace, are transformed into pathways of humility and love. There is no regret here, only clarity. The soul sees that God never abandoned it, never stopped calling, never ceased offering grace. It realizes that even in moments of darkness, when God felt absent, He was working most deeply. This understanding does not produce pride or self-congratulation. It produces worship. The soul bows, not in fear, but in love. In this eternal state, the soul joins the communion of saints. It encounters others who have completed the same journey, souls from every generation, culture, and condition of life. Some were known on earth as saints. Others lived hidden, ordinary lives, yet loved greatly. Many are unexpected. The soul understands now why heaven is full of surprises. There are reunions beyond human imagining. Loved ones long thought lost are found again, healed, radiant, transformed. Old wounds no longer exist, misunderstandings dissolve. Love is purified of all selfishness. Relationships are no longer limited by weakness or time. They are rooted in God and therefore eternal. The guardian angel's mission is now complete. With reverent joy, the angel presents the soul before God and withdraws, not into absence, but into praise. The soul will never be alone again. Loneliness, the deepest human fear, has been forever undone. And yet, even in this perfect fulfillment, the soul does not forget the earth. Love does not narrow in heaven, it expands. The soul now sees those still living with a new tenderness. It intercedes constantly, not out of anxiety, but out of love overflowing. It desires nothing more than that others may one day share this joy. This is why the journey of the soul after death cannot be separated from the life we live now. Every moment on earth is already shaping eternity. Every choice, every act of love, every refusal of grace carries weight beyond what we imagine. Death does not suddenly change who we are. It reveals who we have become. This was the warning and the hope repeated again and again by Padre Pio of Pietrelcina. He did not speak of these mysteries to frighten souls, but to awaken them. He knew that the greatest tragedy was not suffering, not purgatory, not even death itself. The greatest tragedy was wasting the time of mercy. While we live, everything is still possible. Forgiveness is possible. Conversion is possible. Love can grow. Habits can change. Hearts can soften. The door of grace is wide open. After death, there is truth, but no longer choice. The direction set in life becomes fixed in eternity. This is why the saints insist, live as one who must die, but die as one who hopes to live forever. Not in fear, but in readiness. Not in anxiety, but in trust. Not postponing love. Not delaying repentance. Not assuming tomorrow is guaranteed. The 40-day journey of the soul teaches us something essential. God is patient, but not indifferent. Merciful, but not careless. Loving, but also truthful. He desires our salvation more than we do ourselves. He provides every grace necessary, but he never forces love. To live well is not to live perfectly. It is to live honestly before God, to confess when we fall, to forgive when we are hurt, to pray when we feel dry, to love when it costs something. These are the seeds of eternity. The soul that learns to surrender daily will not fear surrender at death. The soul that learns to trust in darkness will recognize the light when it comes. The soul that chooses love again and again, even imperfectly, will find that love waiting on the other side. So if this message has stirred something within you, do not silence it. That stirring is grace. It is the same grace that will one day accompany your soul beyond this world. Listen to it now. Respond now, not later, not someday. Because death is not the end of the story. It is the unveiling of the story you have been writing all along. Live in such a way that when your soul begins its journey, it will recognize the path not as something foreign, but as something familiar. A path already walked in prayer, already practiced in love, already oriented toward God. Then the 40 days will not be a fearsome mystery. They will be a passage, and beyond them, not judgment alone, but home. After contemplating the soul's passage through death, purification, and final union with God, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Eternity does not begin after death. Eternity begins now. The path the soul walks after leaving the body is not improvised. It is the continuation of a direction chosen, often quietly, through thousands of small decisions made during earthly life. This is why the saints, and especially Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, spoke so insistently about daily faithfulness. He understood that no soul suddenly becomes holy or suddenly becomes hardened at the moment of death. What is revealed then has been forming slowly for years. The 40 days after death do not change the soul's orientation. They clarify it, purify it, and complete it. Many people live as if death will somehow fix everything automatically, as if time will be granted later to become serious, to forgive, to pray, to change. But Padre Pio warned that this illusion is one of the enemy's most subtle traps. Not because God is cruel, but because love cannot be forced at the last second if it has been habitually refused. And yet, this truth is not meant to paralyze the heart with fear. On the contrary, it is meant to awaken hope, because as long as we are alive, grace is active. As long as we can choose, mercy is at work. The soul that begins to turn toward God, even late, even weakly, has already begun its journey home. This is why the ordinary moments of life matter so much more than we realize. The patience shown in suffering, the forgiveness offered when it hurts, the prayer whispered in dryness, the confession made with humility. These are not small things. They are eternal decisions disguised as daily routines. When the soul leaves the body, it no longer has the power to merit. It can no longer choose virtue or reject sin. That freedom belongs to this life alone. After death, there is truth, purification, and fulfillment, but no longer growth through choice. What has been planted now will then bear fruit. This understanding transforms how we see time. Each day is not something to endure or waste, but something entrusted. Each encounter is not random. Each suffering is not meaningless. God wastes nothing, not even our failures, if we surrender them. but he does ask for cooperation. Love, by its nature, requires consent. One of the most sobering realities revealed through the saints is that many souls in purification suffer not because of great crimes, but because of neglected love. Not because they hated God, but because they postponed him. Not because they committed shocking sins, but because they lived distracted, lukewarm, divided. This is why Padre Pio spoke so strongly against spiritual mediocrity. He called lukewarmness the most dangerous state of all. Not rebellion, but delay. Not refusal, but indifference. A heart that says later, again and again, slowly loses the ability to say yes at all. The 40-day journey of the soul reveals something striking. God is infinitely patient, but he also respects freedom completely. He invites, he warns, he waits, but he never coerces. Even in purification, the soul cooperates willingly. Even in judgment, the soul recognizes the justice of God's truth. For those still living, this is an invitation not to anxiety, but to clarity, to stop drifting, to stop assuming, to live intentionally, even imperfectly but sincerely, to build a relationship with God that can withstand silence, darkness, and purification, because it is rooted in trust. The saints often said that the best preparation for death is learning how to pray in dryness, how to love without reward, how to remain faithful when consolation disappears. Because the soul that learns these lessons in life recognizes them later rather than fearing them. This is also why devotion to prayer, the sacraments, and acts of mercy are not optional extras. They are training for eternity. Confession teaches humility. The Eucharist teaches communion. Prayer teaches surrender. Charity teaches self-gift. All of these shape the soul for the moment when nothing else remains. And let us not forget the immense power we hold for one another. The journey of the soul after death is not solitary. Our prayers reach the dead. Their prayers reach us. Love crosses the boundary of death because love comes from God, who is eternal. Every Mass offered for the dead matters. Every rosary prayed matters. Every sacrifice offered in love matters. Not one is lost. The communion of saints is not an abstract doctrine. It is a living exchange of grace. One day, each of us will become dependent on the prayers of others. One day, we will hope that someone remembers us at the altar, whispers our name in prayer, offers a sacrifice on our behalf. To pray for the dead now is not only an act of mercy, it is an act of wisdom. As this reflection comes to a close, the question remains not about the dead, but about us. If your soul were called tonight, what direction has it been traveling? Toward surrender or resistance? Toward trust or control? Toward love or distraction? This question is not meant to condemn, it is meant to clarify. Because God does not ask for perfection, he asks for honesty. He does not ask for heroic feelings, he asks for faithful choices. He does not ask us to save ourselves. He asks us to let him save us. The saints assure us that no sincere act of turning toward God is ever too small. A single, humble confession, a single, honest prayer, a single decision to forgive. These can change the entire trajectory of a soul. The 40 days after death reveal God's tenderness, not his cruelty. They show us a father who cleanses his children before welcoming them home. But they also remind us that preparation matters. So live with eternity in mind, but not with fear. Live with gratitude. Live awake. Live as someone who knows that love is real, mercy is near, and time is precious. Because when the final journey begins, the soul does not ask how much it owned, how admired it was, or how busy it stayed. It asks only one thing: did I learn to love? And the answer to that question is being written now, in the quiet choices of today. If you are still listening, it is not by accident. Something within you has been stirred, perhaps quietly, perhaps uncomfortably. That stirring is not fear, it is awareness. It is the gentle pressure of truth touching the heart. And truth, when it is received with humility, does not crush, it frees. The journey we have contemplated is not meant to remain a story about others. It is meant to become a mirror, because one day, without exception, every soul will walk this path. The question is not whether the journey will come, but how prepared the heart will be when it does. Many people think preparation for death belongs to the elderly, the sick, or the visibly devout. But eternity does not measure time the way we do. The soul is shaped now, quietly, invisibly, by what we love, what we avoid, what we postpone, and what we choose to face. No one arrives at death spiritually neutral. This is why the saints spoke so urgently, yet so tenderly. They knew that the greatest danger was not sin itself, but delay, not weakness, but distraction, not falling, but refusing to rise. And among those voices, the words of Padre Pio of Pietrelcina remain piercingly clear. Pray, hope, and do not worry, but do not sleep. To pray is to remain awake. To hope is to remain oriented toward God. To not worry is to trust, but trust does not mean negligence. It means active surrender. It means choosing God again and again, even when it is inconvenient, even when it costs something. The 40-day journey of the soul teaches us that God is both infinitely gentle and infinitely serious. He prepares the soul patiently, but he also respects the direction the soul has chosen. Heaven is not imposed. Love is not forced. God will cleanse the soul, but he will not replace it. That is why this moment now, while you are alive, is precious beyond measure. You can still choose. You can still forgive. You can still confess. You can still pray with effort, love with sacrifice, and turn back even if you feel far away. Grace has not expired. Perhaps you feel regret rising as you listen. Memories of missed chances, words that should have been spoken, love that was withheld. Do not push that away. Regret, when received honestly, is not condemnation, it is invitation. God does not reveal truth to shame us, but to heal us. If your heart feels heavy, begin simply. Do not promise God heroic things. Promise him honesty, a sincere confession, a daily prayer, even if dry. A decision to forgive one person you have avoided forgiving. These are not small acts. They are eternal realignments. If your heart feels numb, do not panic. Numbness is not rejection. It is often fatigue. Begin with a single act of trust. Say, Lord, I am here, even if I feel nothing. That prayer alone opens a door. If your heart feels afraid, remember this. Fear comes from imagining the future without mercy. But mercy is not a theory. It is a person, and he has already crossed death ahead of you. The soul's journey after death is not a punishment. It is a completion, a final clarification, a healing that finishes what love began. But the more we allow love to work now, the gentler that journey will be. This is why the Church never stops urging prayer for the dead and prayer for the living. We are bound together. The souls we pray for today may one day pray for us. The mercy we give will return to us in ways we cannot predict. So if this message has reached you, do not let it end here. Let it move you to act. Pray today for yourself, for the dead, for those who feel far from God. Offer a mass if you can. Pray a rosary. Whisper a simple prayer of trust. These acts echo far beyond this life. And if this reflection has helped you, consider staying close. Not out of obligation, but out of hunger for truth. Choose voices that draw you toward eternity, not away from it. Surround your soul with reminders of what truly matters. Because one day, noise will fall silent, screens will fade, titles will dissolve. Only love will remain. Live in such a way that when silence finally comes, it will feel familiar. Live in such a way that prayer is not foreign, surrender is not terrifying, and trust is not new. Then, when your soul begins its own journey, whenever that may be, you will recognize the path, not as something unknown, but as something you have already been walking. And beyond it, not darkness, but a face. Not judgment alone, but mercy, not fear, but home. As everything slowly falls into silence, What finally remains is not knowledge, not emotion, not even understanding, but truth itself. A truth that once revealed can never be unheard, because the journey of the soul after death was never meant to be distant or symbolic. It was always meant to mirror our own life, here and now, reminding us that one day every soul will cross that threshold, and when it does, there will be no explanations left to ask for, no distractions left to hide behind, no tomorrow left to postpone love, only what we have truly become. The silence after death is not empty, but filled with clarity, meaning, and light, where the soul no longer asks how much it achieved or how it was remembered, but only whether it loved, whether it trusted, whether it chose the light when it mattered. And this is why the saints spoke with such urgency, not to frighten but to awaken, knowing that the greatest danger is not sin itself but delay, not rebellion but indifference, not hatred but the quiet habit of saying later to God until later becomes never. The path of the soul teaches us that God's mercy is infinite but never imaginary. It does not erase who we are but reveals who we have become, purifying rather than excusing, healing rather than ignoring. And this truth is not given to cause fear, but to invite awareness, reverence, and wisdom, because God does not want us anxious about death, but awake to life, alive in the present moment, where every small act of love, every hidden sacrifice, every sincere prayer and forgiveness quietly shapes eternity. The soul that learns surrender now will not panic later. The soul that trusts in darkness will not be lost when light delays. And the soul that practices love daily will recognize love when it stands before it forever. For nothing in this journey is sudden, and nothing is unprepared. As the preparation unfolds now in ordinary moments, in silent choices, in humility, patience, confession, and trust. If your heart feels stirred, do not dismiss it, for grace does not shout but waits, asking only for honesty, for a simple Lord, here I am, because we do not need to understand everything or fix everything today, only to choose the direction of our life toward light rather than away from it, toward mercy rather than pride, toward love rather than distraction, so that when the final breath comes, the soul will not step into fear, but into recognition. Recognizing a voice it has heard before, a presence it has trusted before, a love it has already begun to accept, and beyond purification, longing, and surrender, there is not loss but fulfillment, not disappearance but completion, not judgment alone but embrace, not exile but home, and so live now in a way that makes death familiar rather than frightening, silence holy rather than empty, eternity recognizable rather than unknown. Because when the soul finally lets go, it will not ask where it is going, it will know, for it has been walking that way all along.